Here we go again. Real estate is making the top news headlines right now. About 12 years ago, we had that subprime mess that the lenders got us into, where we made the headlines, and now after all these years, one more time, the Realtor lawsuit is making the headlines. So you may have read a lot of clickbait articles about the Realtor Commissions going away. 6% commissions are a history. The home prices are going to collapse because the real estate agents are not going to get paid anymore. Realtors are going to have to find a new profession. Well, let's unpack what's happened. What was the lawsuit about? What was the settlement about? And how is it going to impact realtor fees and realtor commissions? You want to learn about this from your trusted resource rather than just listen to all those clickbait articles. So first, I will bring you back to this is the Philly suburbs. I do all my business with the Bright MLS. So the rules of the Bright multiple listing service applies. I'm a member of the Pennsylvania Association of Realtors and the National Association of Realtors. So their rules apply, the code of ethics and all of that. And I'm talking about my local markets because different states have different rules and different paperwork and contracts and processes, right? The second piece is this applies to both the buyers and the sellers. So right now, while you may be in the buy mode or the sell mode as an individual, this is going to impact, both sides are going to impact you anyway, because every buyer is also a seller. It may not happen simultaneously, but if a seller is selling their house, they're going to turn around and buy something to live in. So it impacts both of you, the buyer and the seller. So it helps to understand both sides. So what was the lawsuit and what just happened, right? A bunch of brokers and the National Association of Realtors were sued by the plaintiffs, the sellers, and there was a collusion lawsuit. And there's some brokers who chose to settle ahead of the trial, and that was Anywhere. The parent company of Coldwell Banker was one of them. That's my brokerage, and they settled the lawsuit. But National Association of Realtors and some others chose to go to trial, and they lost. The jury awarded a huge damage of $1.8 billion as a result of that lawsuit. Now, it could be appealed, but the law, the processes are very different here. And what the National Association of Realtors chose to do was to make a settlement. So this whole recent brouhaha last week was about the settlement agreement that the National Association of Realtors have reached. It is still not decided. It is not confirmed. The court is going to have to approve it. They expect it to happen in July of 2024. But, if the parties have agreed, everybody's assuming that the courts will be approving this in the near future. So while there are two specific drastic changes in how the realtors are going to get paid are going to come about. And while right now it seems to be business as usual, for us every day in the trenches as the homes are being bought and sold, nothing has really changed as much drastically. But come July 24, these rules are going to get enforced once the courts approve it. And that's when things have to change absolutely. So between now and then, one expects to see a whole bunch of, difference in the way the process is handled. Traditional processes are going to out of the window, and we're going to see new processes coming into place. What exactly they're going to be, we don't know yet, but we'll stay tuned and I'll keep you posted as we go along, right? So right now, there are two major changes that are going to be happening. And the first change is that the sellers will not be able to advertise their buyer broker commissions in the MLS anymore. So the MLS is the multiple listing service, which is only available to realtors, right? And they are not going to be able to list the buyer broker commission over there. So the current practice of paying both agents is that the seller and the listing agent agree to what they're going to be paying the buyer broker, right? The buyer broker is not even determined. We don't even know who that is going to be when these commissions are decided, but they decide to pay a certain number to the buyer broker. And now they're not going to be able to advertise it in the MLS anymore. Right? That doesn't mean that the seller can't pay the buyer broker. That doesn't mean that it can't be advertised elsewhere. It can be on the Coldwell Banker website. It can be on Bellavora home sites. It can be communicated clearly between agents, but it cannot be in the MLS ahead of time, right? It can never be in the MLS. That broker commission field is going to disappear in July 24. And the second change that they're talking about is that every buyer is now going to have a buyer broker agreement with their realtor. right? You cannot even show a single house without that written agreement. And the assumption is that there is a compensation piece involved in that agreement, in that written agreement. And so every buyer is going to be communicating with their realtor and having a contract in writing, which also includes the component of commissions and fees. And only then will they be allowed to show these homes and officially, take the buyers to these homes. So these are two changes. The current practice, of course, is a little different. And let's see how that impacts the future of real estate and how the realtors are going to get paid. So now all this discussion begs that question, who was paying the realtor fees, or who is currently paying the realtor fees anyway? Well, it depends on who you ask, right? Some people claim it is the seller who's paying the realtor fees because, clearly it's coming out of the proceeds of the sale of the home, right? Some people claim that it is the listing broker who's paying the realtor fees because technically it's the listing broker sharing the fees with the buyer broker. And some believe, well, the buyer is the one who's paying because who else is bringing money to the table in this transaction? The sellers are not bringing any money. The listing broker is not bringing any money. It is only the buyers who are bringing money to the table. So they're the ones paying. So those are all semantics. I'd like to think that it is baked into the price of the house in some fashion and form, right? So there are two important considerations regarding this. One is the reason it became a sort of a line item in the contractual negotiations at the time of purchasing a home was that the buyers were already burdened enough. They were bringing the down payment, they were bringing the closing costs, and to have them bring realtor fees would have seemed like a really extra burden. And so it became a line item, and so it wasn't that extra cash required at settlement, which is supposed, it helps the buyers, right? So now that there's this whole brouhaha about the realtor fees, and if they are going to be separated from the value of the house, are the values going to drop? Are the homes becoming more affordable? We've seen some clickbait articles about, hey, now that the realtors are not getting paid anymore, the homes are going to maybe be more affordable for the buyers. That just doesn't sound right, does it? The value of the home is determined by what the market, it's such a strong seller's market right now, right? There's multiple bids on every home. And again, I'm talking about here, Northern Chester County, parts of Montgomery and Delaware County, where I do my business. And a home that comes on the market has so much competition. There is no talk about reduction in home values, right? So this is pure economics. It's about elasticity of demand, right? I have a husband who happens to be an economist, and he talked about, when the sales tax was introduced, right? Who was paying the tax? Was it the buyer or was it the seller? Well, depends on the elasticity of the demand and supply. So if it is a strong seller's market, it is the buyers are going to have to pay the realtor fees. If it is a strong buyer's market, the sellers are going to have to pay the realtor fees, right? Because this is how you get deals done, right? Whoever has the upper hand, gets to be in a position to negotiate better. Now, what happens in a very balanced market, where we call a 5 or 6 months inventory a pretty balanced market? We haven't seen those in a long time. But suppose we have a balanced market, hypothetically, who is going to be paying the realtor fees? Well, every home is a little different. Every realtor's skill set is a little different, right? So the value of the home depends on its location, its condition, and whatever is going on in the market. So it is the location and condition of the home that determines the value of the home, right? The realtor fees is not going to swing it one way or the other significantly. So how this impacts home values, of course, it remains to be seen. It's a little too soon. But again, the home values are determined by so many different factors that the realtor fees are a very tiny component of it all. And it's all about a stronger realtor might be able to negotiate the fees a little better. Maybe a strong seller might be able to negotiate more. Maybe if it is a very strong buyer who's able to show strength and who has no other contingencies on the offer, they may be able to negotiate a little bit. So the negotiating power will shift based on the house, based on what the market is doing, based on how strong the realtor is or the individual transactions, right? So you can't have a universal answer for this is what's going to happen in future for every home, every realtor, every buyer, and every seller. Does that make sense? So at the end of the day, I want to leave you this one final thought. what is the value that your realtor brings to you, right? That is ultimately the bottom of all of this, right? Um, I want to leave you just with that one thought. We'll continue to have this conversation. Please subscribe to my channel. We'll see, you'll see more videos from me, keeping you posted. You need a trusted voice of reason amongst all that clickbait out there, so you can understand better how this impacts you, right? But what is your realtor bringing in terms of value? This is the most expensive transaction that you'll ever do. For most people, it is the biggest thing they own in their lives. It is a really significant financial burden or transaction for them. And so it is important to get good advice, right? Another piece of the puzzle is the very emotional transaction. The studies have shown that the emotions of buying and selling a home is up there with the death of a loved one or a divorce, right? So when you have such strong emotions tied to it, you need someone to hold your hand and guide you through. And the third piece is, it is a complex transaction, right? It is not something that you do every day, day in, day out. And so when it is somebody who is in the trenches 50 hours a week, week after week, year after year, you trust their advice a little more, because you may have last sold your home in a strong seller's market, or you may have last bought when it was a very strong buyer's market, right? Markets change, macro trends change, micro trends change, right? So you believe that you know how things are going to work, and suddenly interest rates shoot up to 8%. How does that impact your transaction, right? While you're in the middle of it. Or you know you're going to sell your home at a certain price, and then suddenly a neighbor comes up with listing their home for sale, and it sells for significantly less than what you wanted for your home. Now, how is that going to impact the appraisal, right? These are all subtleties regarding the transaction that all come into play, and it is a unique set of circumstances. There are unique players. Every home is unique, and it is what happens on that transaction at that time that really matters. It doesn't matter generalizing about life in general or realtor fees or what's happening, because each transaction is so unique. So see where the value is, where the realtors who provide value are always going to be in demand. They need to hold the client's hands. We always take the stress away, and we deliver a best bottom line results, because we're doing this all day, every day. We are keeping track of all the macro and micro trends, and building our negotiation skills and our knowledge of contracts and knowledge of local neighborhoods. And that's how we produce results for our clients every day, right? And yes, the barriers to entry in this business are low, and there are some realtors who didn't quite bother to shore up their skills, and they may be falling out of this market and be looking for different professions. So it's going to impact every realtor a little differently. Be kind in your conversations when you have them with your realtors. Time will tell. Tried and tested professionals will always remain in the business, and their services will always be valued. So speaking of tried and tested, here is a video. Check it out. 3 recent client stories that I will share with you through that video. And this happened last week. And talk about values that a realtor brings. That will be very helpful in understanding some.